So if you're a third or a fourth year or you're a recent graduate from UVA, then when you arrived on grounds, the honor system operated under the single sanction. The trade-off is simple. You agree not to lie, cheat, or steal, and in return, you remain at the university. Very simple. But this all changed just a year and a half ago. And our community of trust, the community of trust is this ideal that was created by the single sanction. The idea is that you can trust every single UVA student just on the basis that they go here because we've removed all of the dishonorable students. That all changed just a year and a half ago. Now, before jumping into the ramifications of this constitutional change, I think it's important that we start with the origins of the honor system in the mid-19th century. So the students at the time were rowdy, and they were rioting, and they were doing things like callothumping up and down the lawn. Callothumping is essentially rioting on horseback, and they would do things like shoot the clock on the rotunda so they wouldn't have to go to class. But this rioting got out of control. And on one night in 1840, Professor John Davis was shot and tragically killed by one of the students. But instead of letting the student go back into the crowd anonymously, the UVA students instead cloistered in their lawn rooms and decided to turn in their fellow student. It wasn't the police, it wasn't administrators, it was students holding themselves accountable. And just 2 years later, those same students formalized this accountability and this responsibility for their own conduct in what is now the oldest student-run honor system in the country. Now, while the honor system brought students together, it also reinforced hierarchies and excluded certain groups for much of its history. Through the late 19th century, the honor committee upheld a Southern gentlemanly code, meaning students could get kicked out of the university for everything from cheating on a game of cards to insulting women. And then in the 20th century, the honor system also acted as a force against change. The honor committee opposed coeducation of the university on the grounds that chivalrous men wouldn't want to report women because they would feel too bad for them. And also, they released a report saying that women have no honor, only deception. And so, even through the late 20th century, the honor committee disproportionately removed Black students from the university, acting as an avenue for students and faculty to rid themselves of people who they didn't think belonged here at UVA. Now, in the 21st century, the honor committee has acted as a modernizing force at the university, but through much of the 2000s, this single sanction drove a wedge between students and the honor system. In fact, from the 2000s on, there were several student referendums that failed, that tried to change from this single sanction to a multi-sanction system. One of them failed by only a percentage point. And so it was a massive change and a massive turning point for the university when the student body voted 89% to change to this multi-sanction system in spring of 2023. And the question that was on everyone's mind was, what would this mean for our community of trust? How could we trust students solely on the basis that they are UVA students if we're allowing some of these students to remain at the university? The answer in the new Constitution was restoration. If a student can and is willing to repair their personal bond of trust with the directly harmed party and also repair their broader bonds of trust with our entire community, then they can remain at the university. And so it became a burden on the honor committee itself, which I had just joined as a first-year support officer. It became a burden on us to create and design restorative sanctions that would facilitate these students on their journey back into our community. And so I was focused on an education-based sanction. And so I reached out first to other schools that had restorative practices. I reached out to JMU and the Naval Academy in particular, other groups like the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities, as well as students, faculty, and administrators at UVA to get their views. And what came out of those conversations was a restorative ethics seminar, a 7-week seminar that centered around weekly discussions. And in these weekly discussions, you would have students from vastly different backgrounds, personal backgrounds, and they would be talking about what led to their offense. They'd be talking about the separation between their understanding of community and the other understandings of community in the room. And so that was what it was supposed to be on paper. But when I went in to facilitate that first session in fall of 2023, I was nervous. Again, restoration sounds nice in theory, but I wasn't sure if these students were really going to buy in to the system. I was pleasantly surprised. In the first 2 weeks, while they didn't necessarily bond with me as a facilitator, I could tell that they were getting to know each other and they were bonding over their shared experiences in the honor process, even if that didn't always paint them in the most positive light, or paint us in the most positive light either as the honor committee. And so that was one thing that we knew that was going well, but there were other things that we knew that we had to change. Even 2 weeks in, I realized that there were these long lectures built into the syllabus about honors origins, about honors philosophy. And while of course those are important, the real restorative work of the honor committee and the real restorative work in those rooms during the seminar happened when the students were talking about their own background and their own experience with honor and their own time at UVA. So I facilitated this seminar in fall of 2023. I did it again in the first half of the spring. And then we saw that this was working, and we were hearing from these students that we should scale this up. And so we did. I trained 5 more facilitators in spring of 2024, and now over 50 students have completed the Restorative Ethics Seminar. These are 50 students that just a year and a half ago would have been removed from the university. And I am so proud of the student body for putting their trust in the honor committee to administer this restorative practice, because I'm so sure that these students who completed this restorative ethics seminar make our community stronger than their absence ever could. Now, we did a lot of good restorative work, but that's not to say that there weren't compromises along the way and that there aren't still people who disagree with the honor committee and our new system. There are some students and many alumni who think that by shifting away from the single sanction, we've irrevocably changed honor for the worse. There are others, including many current students, who think that we should be doing more to support students through the process and educate both students and faculty. I think that we can take 2 concrete steps right now, and they revolve around the sanctioning process. We should add both accountability and rehabilitation along with restoration to our sanctioning guidelines and our philosophy around sanctioning. Accountability in the sense that if to truly restore that personal bond of trust with a directly harmed party, there has to be some level of the person who harmed that reporter. They have to take some level of accountability for that restoration to be real. Secondly, on rehabilitation, the honor committee should be giving every resource we can to students as they're going through their restorative journey. And this is just my view on what we should do next, but it's, while I'm on the honor committee, it's all of ours. Like, this system belongs to every UVA student. So I so encourage all of you to go and vote for the honor representative in the spring that most aligns with your views. In closing, I want to circle back to what I really took away from these conversations with these students. And what I took away was on the topic of forgiveness. Forgiveness is really hard and often personal. Think to a time that a close friend or family member hurt you and you had to forgive them. But I would argue that forgiveness as a community, true forgiveness as a community, can be even harder. When students get to grounds as a first year at convocation, they sign the honor scrolls. And they don't sign those scrolls to deans or administrators or Jim Ryan. They sign that honor pledge to their fellow students, to you and to me. And on that same day that they sign the honor pledge, they also receive a nickel and a poem at convocation. And the poem describes honor in the following way. The University of Virginia writes her highest degree on the souls of her sons. The parchment page of scholarship, the colored ribbon of a society, the jeweled emblem of a fraternity, the orange symbol of athletic prowess. All these, a year hence, will be, at the best, the mementos of happy hours. What that part of the poem is saying is that the thing we're going to remember and the things we're going to cherish looking back at our time at UVA, it's not our diploma. It's not necessarily the things that we learned in class. What we're going to cherish are the memories we made with the people we knew we could trust and the memories of the communities that we helped to build. That same poem ends with the famous lines that you often hear around graduation. I have worn the honors of honor. I graduated from Virginia. But now, in our restorative system, You have the opportunity not just to have worn the honors of honor, but to weave the honors of honor together as we welcome students who have committed honor offenses back into our community and back into our lives. I trust that we will all be made more whole. Thank you.